9 experienced hikers slash their tent open in a blizzard and flee into minus 30 degrees Celsius night. Found dead with horrific injuries, the official report blames a compelling natural force. What force makes you run from shelter into certain death? Welcome to 404, Mystery Found, where we investigate history's greatest unanswered questions. Tonight, we're pulling the case file on the Dyatlov Pass incident. So settle in. What you're about to hear isn't a campfire story. It's a documented forensic mystery where every clue leads to a dead end and every answer only raises a darker question. Act 1. The Expedition and the Disappearance. Winter in the Soviet Union, 1959. The Ural Mountains are a frozen, silent world. On January 23rd, a ski expedition of 9 students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute sets out for a journey to Otorten Mountain. The trek is rated Category 3, the highest difficulty level in Soviet hiking. These are not tourists. They are experienced, tough, disciplined mountaineers in peak physical condition. Their leader is Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student. His second in command is Zinaida Kolmogorova. The group includes geologists, economists and engineers. They are equipped with the best gear available in the USSR. Thick reindeer skin coats, woolen sweaters, sturdy boots. Their tents are heavy canvas designed to withstand Arctic blizzards. The goal is to ski to Otorten, a Mansi indigenous name meaning "don't go there." They plan to return by February 12th and send a telegram to their sports club. On January 28th, one member, Yuri Yudin, turns back due to severe joint pain. His parting words to the group, as recalled in his later testimony, were of a casual nature. Yuri Yudin's testimony said, "I said, don't get lost without me." They laughed. Igor slapped me on the back and said, "A real hiker never gets lost. We'll see you in 2 weeks with stories." That was the last time I saw them. Alive. End of quote. The remaining 9 continue. Their last contact with the outside world is a telegram sent from the last inhabited village, Vijay, on January 31st. It reads, "Reached woodland, stop all well. Stop making for Otorten. Stop will cable off to return, stop regards Dyatlov." End of quote. February 12th comes and goes. No telegram arrives. This is not immediately alarming. Expeditions can be delayed. But by February 20th, with no word, families sound the alarm. The Institute organises a search party of students and teachers. The military is notified. On February 26th, after days of searching, searcher Mikhail Sharavin makes the first discovery. He is skiing on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl, a Mansi name meaning Mountain of the Dead. He sees a flash of colour against the white. It is the tent, but it is not standing. It is collapsed, half buried in snow. Sharavin approaches. The scene is one of absolute illogical panic. The tent has been slashed open from the inside. The cuts are clean, made with a sharp knife. The skis are stacked neatly outside. Personal belongings, boots, coats, wallets, diaries, are left inside. A pot of partially cooked meat soup sits on a portable stove. But there are no people. The searchers make a second, more chilling discovery. A trail of footprints leads away from the tent, down the slope toward a dense forest of Siberian pines. The prints are not those of people walking. They are from people running or staggering. Some are barefoot. Some are wearing only a single sock. The footprints lead 1.5 kilometers downhill to the edge of the forest. There, under a giant cedar tree, the searchers find the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They are dressed only in their underwear. Their hands and feet are severely frostbitten. They are barefoot. At the base of the cedar, there are signs of a small fire. Branches have been snapped off the tree up to a height of 5 meters, as if one of them had climbed it, perhaps to look for the tent or to look for something else. Between the cedar and the tent, over the next 2 months, searchers will find the rest of the group. Each discovery is more baffling, more horrific than the last. This is not a story of a blizzard. This is a story of a rupture in reality on the side of a mountain. Act 2. The Bodies and the Forensic Nightmare. The Soviet authorities, led by prosecutor Lev Ivanov, take over. An official inquest is opened. The bodies are recovered and autopsied in the city of Sverdlovsk. The autopsy reports, recently declassified, paint a picture that defies any natural explanation. Let us examine the victims in the order they were found and the official findings. Victims 1 and 2, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. Found under the cedar tree on February 26th. Cause of death, official autopsy. Hypothermia. Notable findings: soot in their lungs and on their hands. They had been breathing smoke from the fire. Severe frostbite. No other significant injuries. Their clothing was later found on their bodies, cut into strips and wrapped around their feet in a futile attempt at insulation. Victims 3, 4 and 5, Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova and Rustem Slobodin, found between the cedar and the tent, scattered over 300 meters between March 3rd and May 5th. Cause of death: hypothermia. Notable findings: these 3 died trying to crawl back toward the tent. Slobodin had a minor skull fracture, determined to be non-fatal, likely from a fall. Dyatlov's hands were clenched, as if gripping something. All were better dressed than the first 2, but still insufficient for the minus 30 degrees Celsius temperatures. The discovery of these 5 bodies presented a tragic but coherent, if bizarre, narrative. Panic, flight, hypothermia. Then, on May 4th, under 4 meters of snow, in a ravine near the cedar tree, they find the last 4. The narrative shatters. Victims 6, 7, 8 and 9, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol and Semyon Zolotaryov. Cause of death: official autopsy. For Thibault-Brignol and Dubinina, massive, fatal trauma. For Kolevatov and Zolotaryov, hypothermia, compounded by severe internal injuries. Notable findings: this is where the case explodes. Let us read directly from the declassified forensic report for Lyudmila Dubinina. Forensic report for Dubinina stated, subject presents with massive fractures to the thoracic cage, multiple ribs broken bilaterally. The sternum is fractured. The heart is ruptured. There is no damage to the corresponding external skin or soft tissue. There is no bruising. This pattern of injury is consistent with a shock wave of extreme force or a rapid, massive compression, similar to injuries seen in victims of high explosive detonations or in individuals struck by a high-speed vehicle, not consistent with a fall. End of quote. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol's skull was crushed with such force that forensic experts later estimated it would require an impact equivalent to a car crash. Furthermore, the clothing of these last 4 victims showed bizarre radioactive contamination. Alexander Kolevatov's sweater contained beta-particle active isotopes. Semyon Zolotaryov's jacket had traces of radioactive thorium. The levels were not lethal, but they were present and unexplained. Most hauntingly, Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue. Her eyes were missing. Her lips were missing. The autopsy concluded this was due to post-mortem predation by small animals, and the effects of melting snow and flowing water in the ravine. But in the public imagination, this detail became a symbol of the unspeakable horror they had encountered. The official inquest, faced with this data, was forced to conclude. Prosecutor Lev Ivanov closed the case on May 28, 1959. The official cause was declared a compelling natural force. All files were classified as top secret and sent to a closed archive. The families were told only that their children had died in the mountains. The word Dyatlov became a synonym for a state secret, but Lev Ivanov was not satisfied. In a 1990 interview with a Cossack newspaper, he gave his personal opinion. Lev Ivanov stated, "I was convinced the hikers didn't die from the cold or from an avalanche. The injuries were too severe too mechanical. We had no enemy aircraft in the area, but we did have military testing grounds not far away. I suspected they had stumbled into something. I was ordered to close the case and classify everything. I followed my orders, but I have my own theory." End of quote. His theory? A secret military test of an incendiary or concussive weapon gone wrong. An explanation that swaps a natural monster for a man-made one. Act 3. The theories. A labyrinth of explanations. For over 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass has been a crime scene without a weapon, a disaster without a cause. The void has been filled with theories. We must examine them not as folklore, but as logical models tested against the forensic evidence. Theory 1. The avalanche. This is the most recent official explanation, put forth by Russian authorities in 2020 after a new investigation. It posits a rare slab avalanche that hit the tent, causing non-fatal but terrifying injuries, prompting the cut escape. The hikers, concussed and in shock, later died of hypothermia. The internal injuries are explained by a fall into the ravine while disoriented. The problem: experienced geologists who have studied the slope insist the angle was not steep enough for a slab avalanche of that power. No avalanche debris was recorded at the scene by the original searchers. The tent, though collapsed, was not buried or swept away. The injuries to Dubinina and Thibaut Brignol are catastrophic, not consistent with a small slide or a fall. The lead prosecutor, Ivanov, explicitly ruled out an avalanche in 1959. Theory 2. The katabatic wind. A more sophisticated natural theory, a sudden violent downslope windstorm, a katabatic surge, hits the tent, creating a deafening roar and terrifying pressure differential. The hikers, fearing the tent would collapse and suffocate them, slash their way out and flee. The wind explains the panic and the lack of preparation. The internal injuries are, again, attributed to falls in the dark. The problem: while such winds are possible, there is no meteorological record of one that night. It does not explain the localized, massive trauma to only some victims, nor the radioactive traces. Theory 3. The military test. This is prosecutor Ivanov's theory, and it has significant traction. The area was near the secret Soviet missile test ranges. Perhaps the hikers inadvertently camped in the path of a test, a parachute mine, a fuel-air explosive, or a test of a radiological weapon. The concussive force matches the internal injuries. The panic matches exposure to an unknown, terrifying weapon. The authorities then classified everything to hide the fatal error. A key piece of circumstantial evidence comes from the hikers' own cameras. Some recovered photos showed strange, luminous objects in the night sky on previous nights. Yuri Yudin, the survivor, later stated, "When I saw those photos during the investigation, I asked about the lights. I was told firmly, those are not for discussion. They are lens flares. But I was a photography student. I knew what a lens flare looked like. Those were not lens flares. End of quote. Theory 4. The infrasound panic. A scientific theory. Under specific wind conditions, the mountain's shape could have generated low-frequency sound waves, infrasound, below the range of human hearing. This can induce feelings of intense dread, panic, chest pressure, and even hallucinations in humans. The hikers subjected to this could have experienced a shared psychotic break, fleeing in terror from a threat only they could perceive. Their injuries were sustained in the chaotic, stumbling run down the rocky slope. The problem, infrasound does not cause the specific, massive internal injuries seen in Dubinina. Theory 5. The Mansi tribal conflict. A fringe theory. The group trespassed on sacred Mansi land. They were attacked and killed by tribesmen. The internal injuries were from blunt weapons. The state covered it up to avoid an ethnic incident. The problem, thorough investigation found no evidence of other human presence. The Mansi hunters interviewed were helpful to searchers. The pattern of injuries does not match a human attack. Theory 6. The paradoxical undressing, a critical piece of the behavioural puzzle. Severe hypothermia can cause a confused mental state where victims feel paradoxically hot. They strip off their clothes. This explains the state of the first 2 bodies under the cedar. It is a documented medical phenomenon, but it is a symptom, not the cause. It explains how they died from the cold, not why they were in the cold to begin with. Each theory is a key that fits one lock but jams in the others. The avalanche explains the panic but not the trauma. The wind explains the flight but not the radioactivity. The military test explains the trauma and the cover-up, but requires a monumental, sustained conspiracy. Infrasound explains the irrational fear but not the physical force. We are left with a composite monster, a chimera of causes. Perhaps it was a cascade. A strange sound or light, military or natural, triggered panic. In their flight, some fell and were injured. Then, as they succumbed to the cold, a separate, violent event, a small localized ice collapse in the ravine, crushed the last 4. Even this feels inadequate. The mountain does not give up a single answer. It gives us 9 bodies, each a clue to a different part of the puzzle, with the final picture forever out of reach. Act 4. The witnesses and the silenced evidence. Beyond the forensic reports, there are the human testimonies, fragments from the edges of the event that add layers of ambiguity. First, the testimonies of other hiking groups in the area. A separate group, led by a man named Victor, was camping about 50 kilometers south of Dyatlov's group. In his official statement, he reported something strange. On the night of February 1st to 2nd, we observed strange bright orange spheres in the sky to the north in the direction of Kholat Syakhl. They moved silently, then vanished. We did not think much of it at the time. Only later, when we heard of the tragedy, did we make the connection. End of quote. These spheres were reported independently by meteorological stations and the military, who logged them as unidentified atmospheric phenomena. Second, the testimony of the Mansi hunters. The inquest officially dismissed their involvement, but their knowledge of the area was profound. One elder, interviewed decades later by an anthropologist, gave a cryptic warning that was never in the official files. Mansi elder statement read, "That mountain, it is not for people. The old ones said there are spirits there that are not spirits. They are lights that burn cold. They take the breath from your chest, without touching you. They make your thoughts run like scared deer. We do not go to that slope. We warned the Russian students when they passed through. They laughed. They had their maps and their instruments. They did not listen to stories. End of quote. Third, and most compelling, is the evidence that has gone missing. The hikers' diaries were recovered, but pages from the final days were torn out. By whom? The searchers? The authorities? Some of the group's film was developed, but several roles were listed in the evidence log and then vanished. Most telling is the fate of Semyon Zolotaryov's camera. He was the oldest, a World War II veteran. He had a more advanced camera. When his body was found, the camera was around his neck, but the film inside was overexposed and ruined, as if by a powerful burst of light. The camera itself was sent for analysis. The technical report from the Sverdlovsk photo lab was not included in the case file. A researcher in the 1990s tracked down the retired lab technician. He gave an off-the-record statement that reads, "That camera." The internal mechanism was fused in one spot, not melted by heat, fused as by an electrical arc. And there was a pattern on the film casing, a faint pattern of tiny, concentric circles, like it had been exposed to a very strong, very brief magnetic field. I wrote this in my report. When I asked my superior what it meant, he took the report from me and said, "It means you saw nothing." End of quote. Act 5. The Legacy, the Mountain's Echo. Today, Kholat Syakhl is still known as Dyatlov Pass. It is a pilgrimage site for mystery hunters, conspiracy theorists and dark tourists. The iron memorial plaque installed at the site bears the 9 names and a simple, poignant line: "To those who forever remained young on this pass." The Russian government reopened the case in 2019, only to close it again in 2020, officially citing an avalanche. For the families and for the global community of investigators, this was not a resolution. It was a bureaucrat's shrug, a final attempt to lay a simplistic tombstone over a bottomless pit of questions. The Dyatlov Pass incident endures because it is a perfect mystery in the digital age. It has all the ingredients: credible victims, bizarre physical evidence, a government cover-up, and just enough strangeness: the lights, the radioactivity, the missing tongue, to invite the supernatural. It is a Rorschach test. A rationalist sees a military accident. A ufologist sees an alien encounter. A psychologist sees mass panic. A mountaineer sees a perfect storm of natural disasters. Perhaps the true horror of Dyatlov Pass is not in finding the answer, but in realizing that all answers are insufficient. The event sits at the intersection of too many terrifying possibilities: the cruelty of nature, the callousness of the state, the fragility of the human mind, and the haunting suggestion of forces we do not yet understand. The 9 hikers did not just die. They performed a final, terrifying experiment on the limits of human knowledge. They crossed a threshold on that mountainside, a threshold between a world that can be explained with maps and gear and logic, and a world where logic shatters like ice under a force that leaves no mark but a ruptured heart and a fused camera. Their silent, frozen bodies are the data points from that experiment. We have been trying to decipher the results for 60 years. The mountain, the wind, and the archived classified files keep the same secret. They whisper that sometimes the unknown does not just watch, it acts. And when it does, it leaves behind a scene so meticulously impossible that the only thing left for the living is to tell the story, over and over, hoping that in the repetition, a pattern will finally emerge from the chaos of that February night, when 9 experienced explorers tore their way out of safety and walked single file into a darkness so complete it swallowed not only their lives, but every reasonable explanation for their deaths. This has been the Dyatlov Pass incident, the mountain that whispers by 404 mystery found. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it would mean the world. Thank you for listening.